since there's a finite amount of bitcoins, right? And you said you're fairly, what, 2/3 of the way around in mining them all? Is that about right? But the amount of, global currency to which it equates changes. So, I mean, is that part of the incentive, one, for people to mine it as fast as possible, and two, the source of some of the resistance in vendors because the prices would be changing in terms of decimal points, right? Or I might be understanding the whole thing wrong.
Let me see if I have the first question right. Well, one of the questions I gleaned from that was, do merchants have a problem because the exchange rate is volatile, and is that an impediment to adoption? Is that
what you're seeing as an impediment? Or?
That's what people perceive as an impediment, and then once they learn about Bitcoin, they discover that it's irrelevant, because if you have a website, you simply tell your software to show your prices in dollars, because that's what you're used to, and then as soon as someone pays in Bitcoin, it asks them for the exact amount of Bitcoin at the current exchange rate at that moment. So it fluctuates by itself. Computers are good at calculating things, and it's not really a problem.
So it's an online vendor, not a physical vendor, right? Because I mean, even think about when the euro was adopted, right? And everyone still listed prices in terms of whatever old currency the country had. I mean, I'm seeing something like that where.
Yeah. Well, let's assume that Starbucks started accepting Bitcoin. They're a physical location. Their money systems are digital, right? So when they enter your Mocha and you say I want to pay with Bitcoin, and they push the Bitcoin button on their point of sale system, it's digital. It's going to tell them exactly at that moment that 0.23 Bitcoins are required, and then they show a QR code and the person will snap it with their phone and pay. It'll be faster than a credit card. So the exchange rate is only an issue for people holding Bitcoins long term. If you're holding Bitcoins long term, you're doing it for speculative reasons or investment reasons, or because you simply don't want to hold your currency in a form that is going to be depreciated every year, and you're willing to take some volatility for a currency that will not be depreciating.
What would be the cost for a small business to get into accepting Bitcoin?
What is the cost for accepting Bitcoin as a business?
Yeah,
it is about zero.
Is there any hardware or anything?
No, it's open source software. So essentially, if you have a website and you want to accept Bitcoin, you can make a Bitcoin wallet for free on any number of sites and take your Bitcoin address and copy and paste it onto your website, and now you're accepting Bitcoin. That's the crude way to do it. If you want to do it more advanced with like automatic order tracking and stuff, if you want help from professionals to set things up in a more advanced way, you might be paying some amount. But really, I mean, it's not like there's a setup fee for Bitcoin. It's not like you're paying a monthly cost to Bitcoin. It's just open source software.
I don't know if this is more a question to lawyers, but what is the legal definition of a Bitcoin? Is it a currency? Is it bullion? Is it a piece of software? Is it a bit? Is it a byte?
The question is, what is the legal definition of Bitcoin? I think they define it as magic internet money.
Well, it's kind of a follow-up off of hers. What does it require for a vendor to set up shop? And also a follow-up off of his question, which is, okay, I'm running my whole business off of Bitcoin. I'm reporting something to the IRS. What is the current legal definition, and how might that affect that?
Yeah, what is the current legal definition of Bitcoin? There isn't one. We're waiting for governments to say what they will think of this, but there's nothing from any country that I'm aware of.
The Bitcoin proponents will have crossed another milestone when politicians start accepting campaign contributions in Bitcoin.
Yes, hypothetically speaking, if that were to happen, that would be a great milestone. Yeah, it's already happening, by the way. The other part of your question was, can you repeat it?
It was just the current legal definition. I argue, though, I don't know, but I argue that it's software, because there is a definition, there's a legal definition for everything. Until it's determined otherwise, it is software.
If you're talking about how it would be treated, like from an accounting point of view, I'm not an accountant, so speak to your accountants and lawyers and all that, but it should probably be treated like any foreign currency. If you're a company that takes euros, for example, there's a way that your accountant tells you to treat those euros. I would assume that Bitcoin would be similar. It is an object of value. It doesn't matter if it's software or magic internet money or the greatest currency on earth. it has value, and that's provable. And so you're probably going to treat it just like either another currency that you're receiving or a barter transaction. All that stuff, accountants will tell you how to handle.
I thought I heard someone up there say that if someone has your Bitcoin address, they can tell how much money you have. Is that correct?
Yeah, the question is if someone has your Bitcoin address, they can tell how much money you have. Yes, if you make one Bitcoin address and you post it on your Facebook page and everyone sends you a bunch of money, people can look up that address and see that, oh, you've received 300 Bitcoins.
Well, do you receive them or you currently have?
It would show that you received them unless you spent them somewhere else. Of course, you can spend them somewhere else, which is also your other account. And now what's happened? Did the guy spend it? Did he send it to himself? Did it get stolen? No one knows. So essentially, if you publish the information, that's known. But as soon as you want to obfuscate more information, you just be a little bit creative. You know, make 1,000 Bitcoin accounts and send one to each. And I mean, it's very easy to hide the money. Does Bitcoin violate the regression theorem? So the regression theorem is an Austrian concept, which is that money must come from a non-monetary use first. So gold became money simply because it was used before money as jewelry and for all those purposes. And the idea being that a fiat currency is not a real currency because it never had that use, and the only reason that people use it is because of its fiat, because it's by decree of the government. So where does something like Bitcoin fit in, which is not fiat because there's no decree, no government is mandating its use or its value, and yet it seems to never have had a use prior to money. So I think the intelligent answer is, I'm not really sure how that theorem works. Either the theorem's wrong, or either the theorem simply wasn't flexible enough to have the idea in your head that something can be money because it's so perfectly designed as money that people just start using it like that. If you think of gold, maybe 90% of its value is because people use it as money around the world. If people did not use it as money around the world, the fact that it's used in industry and jewelry doesn't make you feel much better when it drops 90% in value. If no one used Bitcoin as money, it'll drop 100% in value. But honestly, what's the difference? One is 90% used as money and the other is 100% used as money. And the fact that it's not theory, but it's actually out in the world working. So I think the onus is on the Austrians to either fix their theorem or to describe why Bitcoin is not that, and then we'll all wake up and stop using it because their theorem says to stop.
A little bit what the miners do to release Bitcoin, the frequency that they are released, and what the importance having has to do.
So the question is, how do the new Bitcoins come into existence, and how does that relate to Bitcoin mining? So the Bitcoin ledger is distributed to everybody's computer that's running the Bitcoin software. That ledger is updated in steps, and each new step is called a block, and within each block are all the new transactions that have happened since the previous block. And as each new block comes into existence, in addition to recording all the Bitcoin transactions that have happened since the previous block, currently 25 new Bitcoins come into existence with that block. And those 25 new Bitcoins are assigned to whichever one of the computers managed to solve a really, really difficult math problem that's used in the mathematics that are involved in recording that block of transactions into the distributed ledger. And in practice, what those 25 Bitcoins, they don't actually go to one individual person. People have joined what are called mining pools, which are basically collectives of a whole bunch of people using their processing power to mine Bitcoins as a group. And then they'll divide those 25 Bitcoins into all those people within that group based on the amount of processing power that they contribute. And it's on average every 10 minutes, but nobody knows exactly how long it will take to find the next solution to record the next block into the Bitcoin distributed ledger.
Yeah, the 10-minute thing is interesting because the network figures out how many computers are working on the math problem by seeing how